I stand before you to tell you that this community is safe again. We are extremely, unequivocally confident that we have the person who is responsible for these tragic crimes on these 3 churches. And I have to tell you, this investigation is probably one of the most unique arson investigations that I've been involved in my 33 years, in that this was an attack on the house of God. This was an attack on not just a place that people go on a weekly interval and worship. It's a place where they've had weddings. It's a place where they've had funerals. It's a place where generations, we're talking about buildings that were over 100 years old, where generations of families have been raised. So though the spirit is still strong, the landmark has been destroyed. We took that very seriously in this investigation, and as you hear about the things that we can talk about, you're going to understand about the passion of the investigators associated with this team. And in the end, you're going to learn that we had some very unique criminal investigators. They were called pastors, and I'll talk about them in the end. As the governor stated, 21-year-old Holden Matthews, who is a resident of Opelousas, has been arrested. He's been charged with state crimes by the State Fire Marshal's Office, Louisiana Revised Statute 1452.1, 3 counts of simple arson on religious buildings. Each one of these charges have a maximum of 15-year penalty. As a quick recap of the case, 3 churches in St. Landry Parish burned in a 10-day span. The St. Mary Baptist Church in Port Barry on March 26, the Greater Union Baptist Church on April 2nd, and finally the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church on April 8th. We can now confirm that all 3 of these fires are intentionally set, and all 3 of these fires are related. Several pieces of evidence, both physical from the scene and technological evidence, have confirmed that Matthews is the suspect. At this time, the investigation is extremely active, and again, as we go through the statements made and questions that we answer, we are very restricted on what we can say, and you're going to understand why. We're still vetting several motives. However, information that the investigators have uncovered is that Matthews had offered, through suggestions and connections, a relationship with a type of music called black metal and its association in history with church burnings in other parts of the world, which have been documented in movies and books. Any question of potential motives are going to go to the federal authorities. There's a lot of discussion about the hate motive. Understand something, that the hate motive is a federal nexus, and the federal authorities are extremely vetting that, and we'll speak to that. However, what you need to understand is that the investigators sought out a very significant threat in this community. And when Matthews was developed as a suspect, we saw an immediate threat to public safety. We felt that other crimes were imminent. In an abundance of public safety, we quickly secured state warrants and took him into custody. So when we say this investigation is still active, understand that there were extraordinary means taken to bring safety to this community. And again, I will say, the threat is now gone. It's now up to the furthest of the investigation and us bringing to the prosecutors, whether it be state, whether it be federal, to be determined the right information so they can do their job. I have to talk about the work of the investigative team, and as the governor stated, it was an exceptional team. The aforementioned agencies, both from the federal standpoint, from the state and down to the local, made this case. This case is a textbook example of successful traditional boots-on-the-ground law enforcement, coupled with the science of fire and fire investigation, and finally modern-day technology. That's how this case was solved. It's a very labor-intensive job, but it was expertly executed by many people who knew each other from previous investigations, but also outside investigative agencies who came to the table under the understanding that not only did we have a serious public safety threat, but we had an attack on our God and our religion. Finally, I want to speak to that. Immediately when this investigation ensued, we knew that our pastors were important to us. Immediately after these fires, the pastors were brought in, and they were part of our investigative team. The first thing they did was pray for us, and that's what set us on the right track. The second thing they did was they became the agents of information. They were a calming voice in the community. And finally, they were reasons why we were able to cultivate the scientific leads that we did. So as we met this morning to brief the pastors on the success of the investigation, we are now moving forward. We're going to continue this investigation. We're now working with these pastors from a building code standards situation to help them design their next building and get through the permitting process to quickly get these churches back into the great work that they do.
Thank you, sir.
But I have to tell you, in my career, I have never seen such a spiritual mission that's come home so quickly, and I appreciate you for that. I'd like to next introduce my friend, Sheriff Bobby Guitros, who, without his support, without his boots on the ground, without his connections in this community, and without his knowledge of how state and federal organizations work, we would have never started off on the right foot that we did. So, Sheriff, I want to give you all the credit for how this investigation began.